Quantum connection with the red thread. I'm Shiloh Sophia. Do you believe that from where I am, if I send you my love, that you can receive it? Do you believe that if you were to allow yourself through your imagination and through your body experience to feel that love, that you could and also potentially return that love to me? In what area of psychology or philosophy or spirituality are we dealing? Well, in our world of intentional creativity, one of our core teachings is centered around the idea of the red thread. And the message is that we are already connected. And that when we choose to agree to be connected, that there's a mutuality, something cosmic happens, and we begin to observe that connection and can amplify the felt and energetic experience of being connected. Now, for me, this idea is quantum. Not in the sense of quanta or quantum mechanics, not in the sense of the direct way we think about physics, but kind of in that way too. Because what I'm talking about is a spiritual phenomenon, or what some would call quantum mysticism, that purports that we actually, as conscious beings, do have an impact on energy and matter, both locally and non-locally. Locally meaning within the body, and non-locally meaning where you are, but you have your own locality. There's a big debate between the physics dudes and the spirituality dudes and the mamas that is so ancient, really, and it's been broiling for some time. It's like an infighting that's kind of hilarious about whether or not consciousness has an effect on matter and the quantum universe. Well, we know that it does through scientific tests. Hearts measured when sending love are shifted. People on the other side of the world experience distance healings, experiences in different environments where a certain group is healed, the other people don't know about the healing going on, and they are healed. What are all of these different ways that energy is happening? And if at the level of the particle there's really no matter and everything's just moving around anyway, what is the real difference between where I am and where you are, except density and a perceived distance? But in ideas of distance healing and connection, there's really no space-time. Some of these concepts were explored by Einstein in what he talked about as spooky action at a distance, how two electrons, once entangled, once they separate, they are always still impacted by each other once they've had a connection. Is that destiny? Is that physics? What are we really talking about here? I like to think about how my husband Jonathan and I had one super rock star date and then did not have another date for 1 year and 10 days. I like to think about how the red thread that we did that night connected us. I like to think about how kissing that night affected us, how we exchanged matter, how we had a ritual of a red thread. I like to think about how my mother, interestingly enough, even though I told her I wasn't going to see him again, she somehow kept a photo that she had printed of him, which I sent her via email, underneath her altar for over a year, had forgotten about it. All of these things make me wonder. We talk about them like synchronicity, like possibility. Some of us talk about it like fate or destiny. Honestly, I don't know what I really believe about all of it. My spirituality is deeply rooted in quantum mechanics, is deeply rooted in how the universe actually works. I don't totally love making up a bunch of stuff that isn't provable. I like both, but what's fascinating is that when you really are open to both, you really see how much connection there is. And because of how consciousness works, and because matter isn't solid, the capacity for consciousness to impact what we perceive as matter is exponential. This is at the root of my awakening regarding intentional creativity. The moment when my teacher Sue said to me, "What do you care about most in the world?" I said, "Ending violence against women and children." She said, "Put that into the clay you're wedging. Send it out to the women now. Believe that it's going there, because it is." That moment, that information passed to me and then moved by me into the clay was the moment where I became conscious of what I call quantum connection. Now, if you look at the etymology of those two words, they don't necessarily equal the thing I'm saying. I'm making up what we call a linguistic abstraction, language that we make around an idea so that we can begin to think about the idea by calling it a thing. Now, this thing that we're talking about is something that we as a worldwide community have been practicing anytime we say, "I'll be there in spirit," "I'm sending you my love." Any one of those phrases that we've been using through family and love connections is so intricately woven with the ideas of intentional creativity and how we can become at cause in our lives for practicing this more. And it is a practice. It's one of the teachings within the 42 teachings of intentional creativity, quantum connection, and an invitation for those of you in our community to practice it, to learn about it, to explore how this feels. And for those of you who are coaches, teachers, guides, and practitioners that use intentional creativity as one of the modalities that you work with others, for you to have a greater understanding of that for yourself. Now, for us, the red thread is the talismanic symbol of this idea. The idea that we are connected because we choose to be, and we use the red thread as this symbol, as a teaching symbol of connection. Now, the word talisman comes from the Greek teleo, to consecrate, meaning that which I am infusing with my consciousness is changed. Now, this is in all ancient rites and rituals within every single spiritual tradition. If a body of water has been prayed over, it's called sacred. A temple, the host, the sacrament, the blessing, any form that we have imparted our intention to, which is so hugely part of spiritual practice, is said to be charged up, right? Is said to be consecrated, is said to carry the energetic frequency that those doing the charging up put into it. So these are not new ideas, and yet at the same time, our awareness and our capacity to speak about it, sort of free of either physics or spiritual belief systems, is at an all-time high. The idea of quantum mysticism has been tried to be put to bed many times by those who are against the idea of this sort of pseudoscience or quackery. But I have to say, since this has been proven by organizations such as HeartMath, that when somebody sends somebody love, that person's physical body receives that love even if they don't know the exact time that it's coming. There have been measures of things like heart coherency when somebody becomes aware, for example, of the reality that they could become coherent in their heart and that their heart has a field of intelligence. Immediately, the capacity of the heart to become coherent ignites and begins. If all of these are so, then why are we not living more consistent with this reality, this potential of interacting and being in a co-creative relationship with the universe as it is revealing itself to us? And then if you add the idea of the observer effect, meaning that because I witness something, it changes what it's doing. If I see the flower will change what it was doing moments before. Guess what? Some schools of thought say the flower doesn't even really exist in the way that it occurs for me until I'm looking at it. This kind of science is constantly on the move and is a wondrous, fascinating, and playful discovery process that has been really amplified for me in my relationship with Jonathan. It is Jonathan, my love, who gave me the awareness to say what I just said to you, which is not my expertise, but wow, am I in love with the idea that we could be a community that's living consistent with spirit without dogma and science without militantism, and find this way for us to have a sacred experience without needing to assign a truth or a belief to it, and that sacred is something that we could experience. We do this together when we join together in our Red Thread Cafe classroom. We do this together when we are on our Red Thread calls. I've been leading calls with community members for 16 years. And so not only do we have things like repetition of dialogue, which is called a morphic field, something that gets created when something happens over time, and there's a certain people who agree and participate in that field, that gets amplified. We also have the observer reality, where people are witnessing this happening and contributing their energy and intention to it. And then we have the idea of the space that we're creating actually calling or attracting others to us based on the frequency that we are holding on the planet, that others who are around us recognize us. People come into either a physical space that intentional creativity people curate and or online, and they say that they can feel an energy. What is that energy? That's where quantum mysticism comes in, because we're actually assigning discovery process to these potentials. Now, your awareness of these potentials for connectivity deals with one of the greatest known threats to humankind and the planet Earth, which is isolation, which is a feeling of being disconnected, a feeling of not belonging, and a very prevalent feeling for many mystical beings who feel like they don't actually belong here. So there's a lot of exiling that happens by choice and also by other organizations and systems in high school and kids. Kids are some of the most brutal proponents of this isolation thing that starts to happen from 8 to 20. We are part of the medicine, the literal and metaphysical remedy to the feeling of isolation through simply saying, we want to invite you to be where we are, and this is happening in real time. As soon as we both agree, it can't not be happening. The question is, will you engage with the happening? Will you be a co-creator? Will you be a co-creator and an observer? Will you watch it happening somehow in real time energetically? Will you feel it happening in your body? And in the case of medicine painting, a huge part of our intuitive painting world within intentional creativity, will you practice it out on the canvas or on the paper like the painting behind me? All of this is part of our sacred work within intentional creativity. And so today I wanted to bring you this idea of quantum connection and invite you to engage in it with us as part of our community experience. Now, those of you who are studying intentional creativity are getting this as a teaching, because you are invited to share this with those in your life that you work with, regardless if that's your lover, your family, or your client base, or your students. This is not a technology that is withheld. This is for all beings, and we are here to talk to you about it, to share it with you, to practice with you, that we could send this free, amazing, real love out to all beings, and know that from a scientific perspective that there's a possibility for quantum connection happening now, and when we agree with it, it starts to amplify. I want to make a distinction. This is very different than a lot of other teachings, whether that's manifestation things or law of attraction things. This is something like in a completely different dimensional department than the way that those practices work. I'm really talking about love, how we live it, how we share it, how we generate it, and also how we allow ourselves to receive that love. The only challenging love relationships I've ever had in my experience was that they didn't let the love in that I had for them. So it's not just giving love, but it's actually allowing yourself to receive the love that's being given. And so I invite you in this moment to just ponder what your inquiry has been around connection. Are there things in this life that you feel that you are truly connected with? And what would it be? Would it be earth or family or a certain philosophy? Like, what are you truly connected with? Another way to think about that, and one of the ways that I think about it, is what am I willing to be claimed by? Because if there's a connection that I value, I want to be claimed by that connection. I don't want to just connect to it arbitrarily and just like, now we're connected. I want to actually be claimed by that connection, to let that become real for me, to move into that space and inhabit the sacred responsibility of the shared mutual field that happens when human beings come together, honor one another, honor earth and all creation. One of the things that we work with in intentional creativity is what we call metacognitive drawing. It's thinking about thinking while you move a pen, and it impacts your consciousness, which then impacts the thing that's getting created, which then impacts your consciousness. It's recursive, if you will. It's a cycle that begins to happen, and that develops synapses, which are, ways of connecting with yourself. You start to get into this potential flow. As you can see by the image, we have quantum connection. We have the heart of the being and the consciousness, sort of represented by her hair. And this love energy is through her consciousness and also from her heart. And all of this is like a thought that she's sending this love, and she's sending it to these beings, right? So it's so cosmic, and yet it's so literal. So I wanted to invite you to experience red thread with me in this moment, that I am extending this red thread with you. You have had red thread with me before, most likely. Maybe the first time you had it wasn't as intense as it is now. In our community, we have that practice that's called tugging on the red thread. And the idea is that those who are next to you virtually, like quantumly, are right there so that you can begin to practice not feeling alone. Tugging on the red thread is a huge practice. Those of you who work with others in distress, again, children or clients or your family, whoever you work with, teaching them the idea of a red thread, especially when you're going through different cycles of time or challenges, that they can tug on the red thread and practice a feeling that you are with them. This is powerful resiliency and chosen self-soothing, an incredible process that is backed up by a single piece of thread. So I'm inviting you to let the red thread really become a part of your life. We call it the way of the red thread. It's a set of teachings that's specifically about quantum connection. It says that we can choose to already belong, and how powerful that is. It says that we each have our own piece of red thread that's unique to us. It says that you're only responsible for the piece that you're holding, and that you are a witness to not only your own story, but the story of others. There's so many more ways to work with it. Those are some of the basics. And people feel so relieved when they get to include themselves, treat themselves as unique, and at the same time be responsible only for the piece which is theirs. And when women in particular get the idea that they're only responsible for their peace, there's a great relief that can happen. But all of this is held within the framework of quantum connection, of the teaching around quantum connection. So I wanted to invite you to do some metacognitive drawing around the idea of quantum connection. I'd love for you to do an illustration yourself of what you think quantum connection looks like. To just let the pen move as you're sort of watching it move as you illustrate quantum connection for you. And as you do that, there's an idea that through doing that, guess what? There are hundreds of other people doing that as well. Are you able to do this drawing while hold the awareness that other people are also doing the drawing? And as all of you are doing the drawing, all of you are actually connected. So take the time to do that and feel what that feels like. When you've finished with the drawing, I invite you to share the thoughts that you have about what happened for you in that experience. All right, wonderful. So now we're going to do a quantum red thread. So I invite you to imagine that this red thread is traveling through space and time, reaching you where you are. And that the love that I have for you, whether we've ever held hands and shared a cup of tea or painted together, is real. Somehow, it's real. So you allow the love that I have for you to come to you. And you just pretend like you can feel it surrounding you and lifting you up. One of my spiritual gifts is an unreasonable desire to end suffering, even for those I do not know. I have an unreasonable desire to ease your suffering, to ease disconnection, and to do whatever I can to send you that love, to be in awareness of all beings receiving this love as I'm sending it to you, that we're also impacting all other beings at the same time. This is a quantum idea, that this is possible. We don't have to agree on things. We don't have to share the same beliefs. But can we engage in the feeling of love being exchanged that is not defined by space or time? Like Einstein says, gravity cannot be blamed for people falling in love. Can we fall into this love, as in to just let ourselves be caught up by this loving presence? They say time is non-linear. So whenever you are watching this, and whenever you are sending love back to me, wherever I am in the world at any time, I would be able to feel that love, because guess what? I am tuned to the love of my community. I let the love of my community surround me, embrace me. I live my life within the context of being totally loved. And so I invite you now, when you're feeling full of our togetherness, for you to now practice sending me love through letting your own loving presence and inquiry at whatever level it is to just fill up. And it's a love without a deity named. It's a love without a belief. It's a love without an agreement. It's pure love in the field. I don't need to protect myself against what you're sending. I don't need to make sure that you are got your stuff in a pile in your life. We're talking about pure love that is personal and also cosmically impersonal. It just is the purity, which is love. It's so gorgeous. So I invite you to just practice sending it to me. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. Just be with that. Be with what it's like to send love to someone that you may not ever sit in the room with, but maybe you will. So I'm just going to open up my space and just allow myself to receive the pureness of love that you are sending. And each person can set up their own boundaries and filters if it's necessary. But if you're already tuned to pure love, then everything comes to me as pure love with the intention that you hold of this pure love, unencumbered. I receive this love as nourishment, like food for my soul. That which is within me, which is love, is in a mutual shared field with the love, which is your love. And now we've created a flow between us. Thank you for participating in the red thread. We are in red thread circle together, me and you, but also all the others who are participating are also held in this circle. The 1 to 2 to many. We're in this together. Thank you for being willing to be a part of this experience. The next thing that I'd like to invite you to consider are these inquiries. For these inquiries, I invite you to just sit in a pose almost of meditation as you ponder what arises for you as I ask them. So it's like an inquiry meditation. And as things come to you, don't grasp, just let them flow through. So it's like, oh yeah, I believe in that, or oh, I don't know. A little bit less of the chatter, sticking to the chatter, and more just letting it pass. Lenore Thomas Strauss taught Sue Hoya Seller's meditation, and not unlike the Zen tradition, she said, when the thoughts arise, just say, clouds, passing clouds. And so as thoughts arise, just allow them to pass them by and let something else get revealed. When thoughts arise, good, bad, or otherwise, if we just don't grasp onto them, there's other thoughts beneath them. So you're just in this open, supple place of loving, of giving and receiving as you ponder these inquiries and deepen your own understanding of what quantum connection is and how you can begin to practice it with those in our community, but also in your life. Shall we begin? Quantum connection. Can I actually send you my love? Can love be sent? If I send it, what is actually happening in the field? Like, how does the love get sent from where I am to where you are? How does it work? Is there science behind it? Is there any movement of particles at all? How does consciousness impact this capacity to send? If you don't know I'm sending you love, do you still get what I sent? If I'm sending you love and you don't know that I am, are you having any physical effect? If you do know that I'm sending you love, are you able to amplify the experience by knowing it? If you know it's coming to you, can you amplify? Instead of be passive, can you let that love expand? Do you have a co-creator role in how that love lands where you are? is the mutual field that exists between us co-created through intention? What role does intention play in the co-creative capacity for us to create a mutual field of loving? How much impact is actually possible through sending and receiving love? Now take a big, beautiful breath. I invite you to pause and do a little bit of writing about what came up for you regarding these inquiries, because what I just shared with you is the basis behind quantum connection as it correlates to the red thread within the framework of the intentional creativity philosophy. When you feel completed enough with your journaling process, come on back. I have a few more things to share. So in completion, looking at science and interconnectedness, I had a few points I wanted to make to just leave you with. And one is that something that you've heard of with me called biophotons, biophoton, life, light. And it is measurable that when I send you my love, that your light would increase. Now, in most of the cases where that has been studied, there was an agreement from both parties that that was happening, but just through you watching, you are part of that agreement. So your light increases as I share my light with you, no matter how far away you are from me. So there's some science to back that up. The individual is referred to as the local, and the local includes the mind, body, spirit, field, and heart. That's your local space, the space that you inhabit. Many people think of local as the edge of the soma, but a lot of us think of the locality includes the field as specific to you, but non-local is like out where you are, but you have your own locality. And so from my center of being, my source, I'm sending it out to you whenever you're dealing with that many elements backed up with intention. Energy and matter and light are moving. They can't not move. They're moving all the time. What's so fascinating about this work for me is that when you combine the mind or the brain, the soma, the physical body, the heart, and the field in which all of this resides, and you apply intention, the intention is actually what activates, because I have the mind, body, heart, and field with me all the time. But when I choose to initiate a loving thought or sending presence, that is my intention to send it to you. That is the force of activation. That is the moment where something gets moved into action. That is the catalyzation and the spark of loving life that initiates. And that's why we focus so much on the intention and the quality of intention that you bring to whatever it is that you create, how that really does impact what happens. In fact, part of what happens is coherency in the space and field of the heart, and then ultimately alignment between the mind, body, and the heart and the field. When we have illness of all different kinds, part of what the healers agree is happening is incoherency in the communication systems within the individual. They call it, right, disease. Some disease is caused by toxicity and genetics and things that we're exposed to and ways that we treat ourselves, and some can be influenced by how we think about ourselves. If someone receives a misdiagnosis, they're going to die. And they're not really going to die, but they could gradually start dying. Like, we're very, very, very influenced by our thought. Really is just so powerful. Whatever we believe about how challenge happens, there's kind of an agreement in both Western and alternative medicine that there's something that isn't communicating. There's something that isn't firing. There's some alignment that isn't happening. And so part of what we work with intentional creativity and healing is the request to the body, mind, spirit, and field to be in coherency. In my teachings, I talk about it as the imprensiva, which was a concept brought about by Da Vinci about how the sensual is experienced by the individual, all the senses. We'll get into that another time. But the idea that there's sort of a centralized intelligence through which the different experiences are coming and filtering through and being made sense of, or the senso commune, common sense. So this information is all coming in, being translated, making meaning, and going out. When the body is telling you something different than the mind, is telling you something different from the heart, we have incoherency, and we certainly then don't have alignment. And then that voice, your own true voice, the voice of your own soul, is clouded by the inconsistent messages that you're sending to yourself, and also that is often being sent by media and leadership and government and authorities, and some stuff is being broadcast intentionally to confuse and confound. And then we have things like technology, the different 3G, 4G, 5G, all those different things. We have toxicity and technology. Those different things are also impacting how we read the field, how our body responds. And a lot of what's happening in the world is incoherent to the human energy and physical structure. So we react and respond and create resistances and often rebel against the onslaught of things coming toward us. That's why having the sacred hygiene of honoring and seeing yourself as this whole system, and then working and being in community with others who are also seeing themselves as a whole system, choosing to be connected in a mutual field so we could support each other, choosing to not feel alone, choosing to take up sacred responsibility, to invite others into sacred responsibility, and to call upon an awakening within our own consciousness. This is joyful. This is an absolute delight to consider that we together could wake up and bring our gifts to the world, bring that which lights us up out to others, and make an impact in the lives of those that we know and also those that we don't know. So I wish to just send you a blessing from my heart to yours, and just thank you for being a part of the experience of quantum connection and being willing to study and explore it with me. And let us practice together as a community how we can be mutually beneficial to each other, and also just live in a space of love, which is going to provide resiliency and encouragement for the path ahead. Mwah. Sending love to